Hello and welcome to Deep Dives with New Perspectives. I'm Michael Bartlett.
And I'm Merrylin LeBlanc. And isn't this a great day, Michael?
Oh my gosh, I have to say because as you know, we're going to be talking about Mars Uranus, but like the whole time I was looking at the inauguration, I was just like envisioning horrific acts happening, and it was kind of I was very relieved at the end when nothing happened.
I was holding my breath at certain moments and also very, very relieved. That doesn't mean, who knows? I think our FBI and other military police type officials know what they're doing and are adhering to the jobs that they have been placed in, which is comforting because you don't want people in those roles with political agendas, whether they're good or bad. You just don't want people in those roles with political agendas. And yeah, yeah.
When we did our talk a year ago on what was going to be happening in 2020, I remember one of the things I ended with was like, and a breath of fresh air, which is kind of like what Pelosi said. But I really think that a lot of us, not just here in the United States, but around the world, took a collective exhale. I mean, this is, here's the Aquarian energy coming in. Here's this air coming with this idea of, what was his speech was all about unification, regardless. I'm not going to work any harder for someone just because they voted for me. I am a public servant for everyone in the United States. I am the president of the United States.
Yeah. And the topic that we chose for today, the conjunction of Mars and Uranus in Taurus, which happened this afternoon, our time, exact. One of the energies that combination can express is energizing or stimulating humanitarianism. And that's what we saw in the whole ritual of inaugurating a new president. The people that sang moved us with the pieces that they chose. I imagine they chose, or at least decided upon, in conjunction with whoever was in charge, as well as the young poet, Amanda Gorman. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And it was the whole thing was uplifting. And I'm glad that Vice President Pence was there. And the relationships that you saw with the past presidents and other politicians, and you got that sense of what many of them speak about in terms of their cordial relationships, the relationships that they form, even though they don't have the same political ideology. They don't let that transcend their sense of spirit of connection. And there's a connection to all of that with this particular conjunction at the 7th degree, 6 plus, the 7th degree of Taurus, symbolized by the woman of Samaria at the well, drawing water for people and stuff. And that's a fitting symbol within the sign of Taurus. Is one of the themes of Taurus is this sense of paradise having been lost and trying to regain it. And with some Tauruses, or Taurus energy, I'm not Taurus, but I have 3 planets in Taurus. You see that sometimes in the pursuit of material things, and trying to have some beauty around you, and sometimes it goes overboard because there's a positive and negative expression of it. But when you look at the symbol is really pointing to something bigger than the material. Yes, we all need water. And if this woman is drawing water to, you know, for daily existence, there's that. But there's more to it because she was actually passing on some important information. So in the whole story in the Bible, in the Gospels, and you get that it's really paradise as we understand it from a biblical sense is really about being in some ideal spiritual state. It's not I mean, yes, there's Mother Nature and her beauty, and that's there, but there's a sense of relationship to it. Even the whole story about the serpent and the apple, there's relationship going on there. And so there's this thing about Taurus that is in seeking to find paradise, to be surrounded by paradise. The spiritual component is extremely important. Otherwise, you get kind of, and I think, our contemporary culture, especially over the past couple decades at least, has gotten so anchored in materialism. And one of the things I have, one of the things I would find interesting to see in studies, from having this almost a year of being in isolation with COVID, and to what extent I know that Amazon and the likes of it have certainly made a lot of money over this past year. To what extent, though, has the isolation limited people's fixation on material goods? Not that material goods are bad, but do I really need more stuff? Do I really need this particular item or not? Because this is what this particular configuration. Now, it's the cycle of Uranus and Mars is a 2-year cycle. So Mars is actually going to leave the sign of Taurus in a month,
Right.
and move into the sign of Gemini. But Uranus will be there for about 5 years, 5 more years. And consequently, it alone is a kind of awakening energy or a quickening energy about how we're treating the earth. I mean, the last time we had Uranus and Taurus was the end of the 1930s, coming out of the Great Depression, going into World War II, and it ended in 42, that transit in Taurus. In the spring of 42, it went into Gemini. But still there's this, the whole thing, the whole idea of looking at the Depression and then looking at the war. It's like the values, and this is a Taurian attribute, the values that we have, were behind countries joining that war. And the war, and many people say the war really got us out of the Depression. And aside from programs that in this country FDR brought in that helped stimulate some of the economy, but the war was the big package that put people to work. Women went into work in the factories to help get what was needed to be involved in this war. And the end result was that Americans after the war were able to go after the American dream of having your own home, not a McMansion, but a home that you could call your own, that provided the shelter and comfort that one needs.
Definitely. You bring up so many really great points. I mean, it's, the last time, like you said, in the late 30s, there were three significant things that happened that year. That was the last time a public hanging happened in the United States. It ended up being a racially motivated one. And so in some ways, I'm kind of hoping, meaning that it was a white person who hung a black person. And it's in a way, like, I wonder, like, maybe this can mean, that as in the sense of with Black Lives Matter, that maybe, maybe we can actually see an end to police brutality in that regard. Maybe that's one of the things that can happen and change. Because, Mars has to do with that way in which we patrol things and we work through things. And Taurus is about a new, is about form. And with Uranus there, it's like, how do we do like a new form of authority? How do we have new types? Like you talked about, it's important. Taurus is the first sign that allows us to have relationship with other. We realize the value of relationship through Venus and the importance. We want to have everything, but we realize if we have everything, then those around us don't have anything. And people aren't going to really be happy about that. So what's the great thing? Like I just ended up watching the Lord of the Rings, and the singing with the dwarfs with all the gold under the mountain. It's like, at a certain point, like how much is enough? And we're seeing that actually play out in the world, right? This 1% has gained a level of wealth again fold. So it's this interesting thing. But now we have Uranus coming in. That last time it happened was also the abdication of the King of England to marry the divorcee, Miss Simpson, Miss Wallace Simpson. So she, he left the English kinghood. So will we see like maybe an abdication of some sort? Will we see a stepping down, over the course of the year? I kind of wonder, will something happen maybe with Biden that puts Kamala as president? That would be a new form for this country.
I was thinking of Trump not winning the election, that he finally had to abdicate and say, I'm out of here. But in the case of
that's a good point.
Of England, you had, it was a question of personal values, and Taurus has a lot to do with the magnetic attraction that one finds in special relationships. So, this is a time of somebody is in a relationship or considering a relationship. The magnetism is vibrant for that to occur with this particular.
What's funny, the other one that I picked up that happened was that this American woman who was visiting Europe at the time, because we also have to remember this was, the middle of the Second World War. So here, this woman who saw Hitler at a horse race or something in the box. And so she tried to get up to him and, she got pushed away or whatever. And finally, during some exciting moment within the performance or act or whatever it is that went on, she saw her way and she went in there and she kissed Hitler because she was just drawn to his warmth. So this interesting thing, because Uranus, Mars, Taurus, I think of a piercing of boundaries, right? A piercing of a confined sense. Taurus is fixed. Uranus doesn't want to have anything, doesn't care about things being fixed. Mars certainly doesn't care about anything fixed. So you got the two of them, Mars going in with this little plow, opening it all up, and Uranus going and blowing it up, and then the plow. I mean, one or the other is going to open up. It's going to have to force that bull to move.
Well, some of what you were just saying helps me think about Uranus kind of awakening one to one's soul's attraction. That there's something when there's such a strong attraction and bonding. I really feel that that's coming from a soul level, more so than just pure physicality. The emotional states of Taurus are very Venusian, but also, within that Venusian quality is that sense of, Venus, came out of the ocean, the sea of not just conscious, she came to the surface, which is consciousness, but she came out of the depths of the unconscious and subconscious. And to me, that's like tapping into your soul and awakening to things about you that aren't obvious on a physical level at all. And I think Uranus there can stimulate that very strongly. Now, the interesting thing though about Mars there is that Mars is in its detriment. You know, it rules the opposite sign, Scorpio. So there's a kind of possibility that there'll be, you know, Mars and Taurus can love the physicality very much, but it can also be extremely stubborn, or it can bring up the negative aspects.
And what did we see literally as Mars went into Taurus? We saw
Remind me.
a herd of cattle making its way through the Capitol building. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's kind of how I saw it. I mean, it was very much like a bunch of bulls that were like, we're going to break this down and we're going to get in there and no one's going to tell us no. Right? I mean, it was right on the tail. It ended right there. I mean, it began with that Mars in Aries at 29 degrees. I'm not sure what the Sabian symbol is for the 0 degrees of Taurus at that point, because it's, that's what the
Well,
switch.
it's a beautiful countryside. It's all about nature and its pristine beauty. And of course they were, I guess, dressing the guy. Didn't that guy have horns? The guy, that bare-chested guy, etc. There was something very Taurian about his expression.
Aries and Taurus. I mean, it's very interesting how that played out.
Mars Taurus,
Yeah.
kind of.
And like what we said in the last one, I mean, I remember watching it and they were talking about the one newscaster had said she'd interviewed one of the people in there in the beginning. They said, yeah, we went here, we did this, we did that, and then we got bored and we just left. And it's like, and that's the other thing that I think, like with bulls, like if you want, you can't force them to do anything, but also when they're not interested, they're not interested. So it's because there's very, and I think what I'm kind of speaking to, because you're speaking the spiritual thing, I think that there was a certain energetic zeitgeist that was awakened in each of these. I would love to see what each of these individuals' charts are. I mean, they have almost, it's like the FBI's most wanted list at this point, like all these individuals, because they videotape themselves and everything. They're thinking they're saving the country. They have no vision that they're doing anything other. That's another thing about Taurus, right? It's this blind, self-deluding faith in itself that it's right and everyone else is wrong. And it's not afraid to defend that idea. Those of I have Jupiter in Taurus, so I know I can be a real stubborn, Taurian in that kind of sense. But it's another thing of that. Like, so what is it that got awakened in these individuals to show us? I mean, we're still kind of reeling from it. We're still kind of sitting with this fact of, because it's basically what's gone on the last 4 years. Did I just see what I thought just happened? I mean, that's really what kind of is, like all of us are sitting with this thing, like, did we just see like people that are like our parents and our grandparents' age, like get up there and like throw things at police officers and go in and urinate in elected officials' offices and rifle through their desks? I mean.
Well, this is like the Uranus in Taurus, the individuality, and I'm not talking about individuality that's evolved in the process of individuation that Jung talked about. I'm talking about just the fact that with Taurus, and people with strong Taurus really, really, stay in that kind of, this is my expression, this is what I want, this is how I feel. And that's kind of part of the negative in terms of detriment that we say in astrology, where Mars isn't as strongest. And so unless the person, because there's other aspects in the chart, unless the person raises that vibration to a higher level, and maybe for other reasons in a chart, like I said, I have 3 planets there. I mean, I could be whatever. but there are planets that move me in a spiritual direction. And so this has been my an influence. I mean, I have Neptune on the ascent, like within 5 degrees of my ascendant. So it's sort of, I'm drawn more to the spiritual realms and how I want to, especially in how I want to appear. It's not like I want to appear deceptively. I wouldn't have spent 9 years in the convent otherwise if I just wanted to deceive people and think that, oh, she's really spiritual and religious. No, 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 no. I have Jupiter in the ninth house, which is
Hello.
also about certain either cultural or religious kinds of groups and of that sort. So the people with strong Taurus energy, if and that's where I'd go. I agree with you. It'd be interesting to see these charts because there may be other factors that keep them from being the bull who wants, no, I want to eat that patch of grass, not this patch.
Well, that's what they were kind of doing, right? They were saying, this is, and the thing is that Taurus is also, the toddler's manifesto. It has minitis. It's like, this is mine. They're like, this is my house. It's like, no, this is our house. That's the stepping of the Venus from that me-centered place, the little toddler-oriented place, to the we-centered place of like, oh, this is for everyone. You don't, like, there's that always old saying, like, where it's certain about taking care of things in a certain way, because like, that's why we don't have nice things. That's the transition from Taurus to Libra. It's like, beginning to learn to take care of the things, beginning to learn to take care of the relationships, beginning to learn to take care of other people, and realizing that means that you're also taken care of.
Right. I also think, the opposite side of that, of Mars being the destroyer, like Pluto, they share that scorpionic drive to sometimes get things out of the way. And so some of the behavior we saw was this negative Taurian behavior of, no, yeah, I want that, but I don't want this. And also within that, it appears that there was an intention on the part of some people to actually murder some of the people that were in the Capitol. I mean, we don't, really have that for a fact, but we did see evidence that they were prepared to attack people and that they were looking for certain people, and they were saying, what, hang Pence, was that the saying? So this whole Martian element, this is the warrior in Martian of, destroy anything that's in my way kind of
And
energy.
what's squaring both of those right now?
I'm thinking.
Jupiter and Saturn
Oh,
recently moving into and actually Mercury. So we have 5 planets involved in a square right now. I have to say, I'm kind of thankfully relieved that there wasn't more that went on today. And I think because, Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius, Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius, Jupiter is the sole ruler of Aquarius. I think, with the overwhelming intention today of representing our country for the rainbow it is, honoring the spectrum of expression, and also the sheer relief of a never-ending onslaught of tension of, oh my God, what's next, that all of us have endured for the last 4 years, that none of us have wanted to say out loud, because better than to ever say to the universe, oh my God, what else could happen? Because that's exactly when something else does happen.
And something else could happen because those squares are first quarter squares. They're applying. So, well, they're not applying the all the for all anyway.
We've got a
Anyway,
mixture.
any event, we are in the midst of huge changes.
Yeah.
And some of those changes are not going to be pleasant for some people at all. I mean, I was just, before we came on, I was looking at some of the New York Times breaking news about Biden, we've rejoined the Paris Accord, the climate accord. And there's other things that, have been on his agenda that some, like the coal industry, may not be happy with, et cetera. So, hopefully the people, whatever is done that some people find horrific, they're not going to uh, consider insurrection as a response and start a civil war. Let's hope that that doesn't happen. But I feel that some of those thousands, and I guess there's a few million that were very much behind Trump to the end, that they might hopefully be drawing a line about how far they would go in terms of involvement, especially having witnessed some of the consequences for some of the people who were engaged on January 6th with destroying our Capitol building. And also, well, it wasn't just the Capitol building, was it? 6 or 7 people were killed. They died as a result of the shenanigans. Yeah, no, they were insurrection. And it's interesting because even Mitch McConnell came out, was it yesterday, and said that um, Trump was behind the insurrection. And yeah.
Well, the other thing we have to remember too, talking about Mars, this Mars is the same Mars that he has on his ascendant and he was born with. And it's like, to be honest, I feel there's almost like this Pied Piper kind of, uh, flavor to him. And it's like, as the music begins to die off in the background, people will begin to reach, come back to their senses. Because it's amazing how one person, we saw this, back in the 1930s, actually, where one person's ideas and ideals adversely affect not only one's own country and culture, but the world. I mean, the heads of state that had to deal with our president over the last 4 years. God bless them for their patience and ability to be present.
Yeah. Wow. I was thinking when you were talking about Trump's Mars and this present Mars has been in a first quarter square to his Mars transiting, and also bringing about changes for him. So who knows? I mean, um, the question is, we know that he's been planning on running again. Does he really deserve to run again? Is that the whole issue of accountability? Mars and Uranus, and when we, going back to World War II, accountability, for an event such as a world war is important. There are things that need to be done that hopefully it will never repeat itself again. And one of the things, though, that I always reflect on World War II in terms of dealing with discord, with opposition, et cetera, was the Marshall Plan. And that came about after Uranus moved out of Taurus. It was into Gemini. And of course, Gemini being a sign that's neighborly, hey, we're brothers in that generic sense. And the Marshall Plan allowed Germany to rebuild. You wouldn't, I can remember going to Germany in the 70s and going, this is amazing. Having seen movies and pictures of the destruction that occurred there, especially in the last year of the war, World War II, and how that country has rebuilt itself. and the relationships that that country has with the United States. I think it was that nice balance of, yes, there needs to be consequences. And there also needs to be that reconciliation process where the consequences aren't so harsh that the person cannot live a good life.
Which is what created the whole situation for Hitler to even come into power, because the Versailles Treaty was so, um, what do you call it?
Punitive.
Punitive, exactly. And so I think, the German, it was really hard for Germany to do it. And actually, I think it was like what? Like, I think within the last 3 or 5 years, they finished paying off, I think, the last of their reparation loans and payments and everything. So, it's, I kind of heard that kind of mirrored in a sense of like what Biden said today. And I agree. It's like, we can really only go up from here. It's like from this place, how do we create a place of honoring our unity, honoring the diversity that we share and the beauty that it is. I mean, I think today's ceremony was a really good opener for that. And I think the way he's going to build his cabinet, it's very interesting, looking at his chart and seeing these things. It's like, it's good that we have an elder statesperson available to operate this. I mean, in a way, it's very Aquarian, right? We have him acting as the Saturn part of it and Kamala acting as the Iranian part of it. Because she is so new. She represents so many new, three new parts to, our senior executive branch at this point. So it's going to be very exciting to see what gets created in these coming months. The changes, the truth is, what we can say with these quarters and with these things is that they're opening points. So, we're likely to see these things unfold over the next, couple months, as opposed to necessarily today. Fortunately, nothing just today happened in that regard.
Well, you maybe look to, when is the fullness of this Mars Uranus cycle occurring? When will Mars be in the opposite sign of Taurus? It's Scorpio. And so that's why I was flipping through to see. And it occurs actually the very beginning of November, where Mars enters. And of course, Uranus at that time will be at like 12, 13 degrees, and it's retrograde, so it's going back down to 11 or so. And Mars will travel very quickly. I mean, it's in a mode where by the end of the month it'll be at 20 degrees, 21 degrees of um, of Scorpio. So that might be a real good time to see, has Mars Uranus energy reflected, a real stimulation of humanitarianism, where we definitely care for all the people on this continent as well as the world by our actions and deeds? Or are we still in this kind of biased, prejudicial, you know, locked horns kind of situation where there's no coming together, no compromise situation?
Well, the good news is, that's the this conjunction of Uranus and Mars it's a new birth. So, when we get to that opposition point, that full moon point, as you say, we get to see the full realization. We'll get to see, and also, when it goes to its square, right? When that Mars is squaring Uranus next,
Right,
and
well, it'll be in Leo, somewhere in between there, as I flip through here.
which is Trump's return. His Mars return will happen at that point. So will that be where he's, in 6 months, or he's up for the full terms of the impeachment come up, and he's not able to run for office again, and there's some sort of a thing that comes up.
That'll be in mid-June into July that it'll be in Leo and coming into orb with a square again from a first quarter
It's
square.
gonna be interesting to see how it plays out, and I think it's really powerful to have this for the inauguration day. It's a nice birth moment of creating something, and with the intentions that were shared, as well as the underlying protective measures that were taken. I think I'm heartened.
Right. One one of the things that this is totally unrelated to how we've talked about Mars and Uranus, but it is Mars and Uranus. Um, is that Mars represents our sexual life. And so Mars Uranus, I mean, we don't often think about Uranus as a sexual energy, although was it Barbara Hand Clow who wrote a book about Uranus, and actually her whole point, I think, was that it is the awakening of our Kundalini energy that is involved in our sexuality, etc. So who knows in terms of that? But I was going to say, with the Biden administration, there's this whole concern about, that was brought up with the election year of, you know, different forms of expression of sexuality, transgender, bisexual, um, homosexual, whatever, that there may be some, taking back or whatever of some of the laws that were formed. And I would say with this energy, that's probably not to worry about within this coming year. Um, but it may, the energy on a personal level may provide some unusual expressions that people may have not considered before. That's just taking it to a totally out of the political scene.
Well, what you find is it's this interesting thing of when rights are granted, um, they're very rarely taken away again. Like, people thought, oh, well, gay marriage will be taken away under Trump. Well, it didn't get taken away. Marijuana will get taken away. All these different things. It's like, well, usually when you start doing it and you start seeing it, the medical, Obamacare for everyone. That was one of his primary things he was expressing that he was going to get rid of, and he didn't even get rid of that because there's something about when people finally have something, and that's very Taurian, right? It's that security again, that a chicken in every pot. And so, but I think we're going to be in the
There
process.
is still this whole abortion thing in the, where there's some cases that have been, that are, I think, on the Supreme Court's docket that, and I don't know, I'm not, with this whole political scene lately, I've not paid much attention to that. But there is a concern about abortion rights for women, that women have a right over their body and what's done to it.
Taurus and Aquarius, they're very, all the fixed signs are very set on their ideas. So it's really nice that Uranus is in there and it feeds back into that Aquarian part. And I think the chances of us going backwards in the rights for people, I think, are very unlikely, but it doesn't mean that there won't be setbacks and other issues that are keeping it in the consciousness and for us to be looking at it, because it is something we should be looking at and working with and discussing.
All right.
Anything
All
else?
right.
Sorry.
I was just saying, anything else to say about Mars and Uranus?
Stay tuned.
Those two have a little bit of trickster energy. So, today was a relief, but that doesn't mean, in Tarot, Uranus is the Fool card. So. And Taurus is the Hierophant, the High Priest, the High or Priestess.
Those three energies together can also, there can be a really beautiful innocence about it. It can be very Sagittarian in a sense of like, oh, I'm just going to go and experience something and not realizing the consequences. But, I think with all that Saturn and Jupiter and everything else that's getting on in Aquarius, we can no longer, ignore what's been swept under the carpet. And I think, that's part of what this Uranus is, because I always think of Taurus too as like nature. the anima, the planet in a sense. And it's that Uranus is going to help us really start to become aware, like we have this last year, seeing when the world is kind of turned off, our effect on the world, and that we need to start acting as the stewards of the planet. It's another important part of Taurus. Stewardship is really crucial.
Yeah, awakening to a deeper level of our humanity. Definitely. So, well, thanks, Michael, for all
Thank you.
this.
People can reach me at coremichael.com or at michael@coremichael.com. If you like our show, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please share with your friends, please feel free to comment, and tune in next week when we talk about something else.
Right. You can reach me, Merrylin LeBlanc, at moonwiseastrology.com or Merrylin LeBlanc at gmail.com or moonwise at ksfr.com. So feel free to contact me. Phone number 505-690-1878. So till next, and listen to Moonwise on, Saturdays at ksfr.org at 10:30. And then there's the podcast you can listen to anytime. Just go to ksfr.org and click on their program tab and you'll find podcasts and it's listed there.
All right. Well, have a great night and have a great week, everyone. Thank you, Merrylin.
Bye.